Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing alright. Let me check my volume. Always check your sound. Check your mic, I should say. You never know if the person can actually hear you. You may be talking and chattering away. You may be saying the best thing that you've ever said in your life, and the only person who can hear it is you. Spoken from personal experience. So 11:38, good. So this one is going to be quick, and so if you see me come in and then come out, that's probably why. I saw this morning as I was getting ready to do the show, and so I kind of got detoured from the stuff that I was already thinking about doing for the show. So I'm going to keep this thought within 10 minutes. I'm even going to time myself, and at the 10-minute mark, just clip off. I may not do that, but we'll see. By the way, 5 p.m. today, it may be a little later. My wife doesn't feel well. She's going to the doctor's office. But this evening, it may be 5 p.m. It may be a little bit after. We will do, I guess, whatever the patrons have chosen. I'm going to pick one of the topics, and we're going to do one of the patrons. And we're going to get the drawing done today also. At least I'm going to try to get it done today, depending on what time we get back from the doctors. So that's that. But still, up until 5, still putting your topics. As long as it's not too late, we may be able to talk about more than one. So there's that. Let's see. Skip Rock Jamal's got his back to school clothes on. I do not. I love this shirt. I have a shirt. This is the shirt I was wearing in Panama when I was sweating like sweating my balls off. Panama's climate is like this humid climate, so everywhere you go. And then this thing of like, God, I'm sweating profusely. Why am I sweating profusely? And you look around and it's like, oh, okay, well, other people are sweating profusely. And you get to the point of like, you know what? Fuck it. Who cares? I'll just sit here and sweat profusely. And you just drink your beer while you're watching something. 10 minutes. Jeremy Corbyn. I want to give a parable. And I'm calling it a parable, even though it's something that I kind of came across when I was growing up in this country. African American, growing up in America, and at some point along the line, I think it was in high school, I came across certain books that explain the history of this country in a way that was stark and that was far more real than anything I was getting out of history courses. And I was pissed. Like, I grew up in this kind of uber black phase of thought. Now, I say that, uber black, whatever that means, but you know what I mean, the point that I'm getting at. All through high school. Like, I remember my dad, on the very few occasions where I got to interact with my dad, he was like, yeah, I'm going to send you over there to give me some bean pies. He was joking about the Nation of Islam thing. I wasn't going to the Nation of Islam. But he looked at it as, you're on that path. That's how, that's the mode of thought you're in. I wasn't joining any cult or any religion or anything else. I think religions are cults. I wasn't joining any of that stuff. It was just, I looked at the history and I said, this is not what I was told. Not just that, the position that me and a lot of people who look like me are in this country is not an act of God. It's an act of policy. It's an act of rules. It's an act of this kind of cultural phenomena that takes place where there's systemic norms in place that make it difficult for some while easier for others. And I'm using easier in the terms of relative terms. That changed for me starkly, almost all at once, when I began to realize that it is true that there are some people in the country that are racist, but there are many of the people that are not. And just because they don't necessarily regard their history honestly, doesn't necessarily mean they're racist. There's a difference in those things. Now, what I mean by that is there's gradations of people in society. That's what I'm trying to get at. And you're not going to have people who fully take on this burden of responsibility, because from their vantage point, they weren't alive during that time. By the same token, it is dishonest to believe that there weren't advantages garnered from that time. I guess that's what I'm saying. But you have to keep both of those things in your head as an African American at the same time. This came stark to me. I was having this called neuropathy. It was this nerve pain, and I was in a dire pain, and I was in the hospital like every other night, getting morphine injections. And at one particular night, where the hospitals are like, "Look, you're continuously coming back to the hospital for morphine. We don't know if you're pain seeking." I wasn't. It was nerve pain. It was just regular pain medication. Didn't know anything about it. And it had been going on for months, and I hadn't did anything about it. And the only reason I'm doing anything about it now is because when my mom came to visit for college, she's like, "Why are you sleeping in this way?" Now, I call my doctor. It's a foot doctor, Dr. Duke. At 3 in the morning, Dr. Duke drags his ass out of the house, didn't have to, comes to the doctor's office, didn't have to, and is there for 2 or 3 hours attending to me and attending to a freaked out parent. Dr. Duke is Jewish. From my vantage point at the time, he's white. And it dawned on me all at once, if how you thought about the world was right, this guy never comes out the house. Like, it was the stark realization of, oh, wait, there's a difference. Like, you have to keep multiple things in your head at once. I'm very, I tend not to like to use the term racist. I don't like it per se, unless it fits. I've used it for Trump, yes. But I tend to be somewhat sparing in my use because I don't necessarily want to devalue the word. There have been a lot of people who suffered, who were killed, who were maimed, who were hurt, who were broken and put in prison, who was enslaved, who was subjugated in a system that robbed them of humanity to some degree. There's a lot behind that particular word. It's somewhat of a loaded term. So I'm greatly bothered when I see something taking place across the pond where they're doing something similar. And not doing it because they need to do it, but doing it purely for political ends. Margaret Hodge. A while back, Margaret Hodge is the rep in England that's a Labour member, a Labour MP, that screamed that Jeremy Corbyn was a fucking anti-Semite. Now, Jeremy Corbyn is the leader of her party, and she's screaming like a howler monkey that Jeremy Corbyn is a fucking anti-Semite. Now, the question becomes, what are you using for this? What are you using for this? What thing did Jeremy Corbyn say or do that got across how much of an anti-Semite where you need to go screaming at him like a goddamn lunatic? Nothing. He wouldn't accept her narrative of what anti-Semitism meant. And the language that she wanted to use for anti-Semitism was to prevent him from criticizing Israel. Israel, at this point, the racist state that calls itself a Jewish state and is literally, at this point, an apartheid state. She has nothing to show for this. And in a real way, she's using this thing of, you had 6 million Jews die in the Holocaust. Literally burned, maimed, sewed into hats, broken and ripped apart human beings purely for the sake of their heritage. That's what you had for the Holocaust. Now you have Margaret Hodge trespassing on that, using that, fashioning that into almost this kind of political weapon and political bomb, purely for political expedience, not because there's any reality to it, purely for political expedience. That is worse than racism. That is worse than anti-Semitism. That is her trespassing on the lives and deaths and literal suffering of millions, purely because she believes it's going to get her 1 ounce extra of political juice out of attacking Jeremy Corbyn. Take a listen to this. This is Hodge on Sky News. Tell me if you see the problem in what she's saying.
The day that I heard that they were going to discipline me and possibly suspend me, it felt almost like I kept thinking, what did it feel like to be a Jew in Germany in the 30s?
Think about that. Do you know what they ultimately did to her? They slapped her on the wrist. They didn't even slap her on the wrist. There was no disciplinary action. They said they were going to discipline her and backed away from the disciplinary proceedings. They said she apologized. She said, I did no such thing. I haven't apologized for anything. She is comparing. She called the leader of the opposition a fucking anti-Semite with nothing to show for it. Asked her point blank, what did Jeremy Corbyn do? Only thing she could attribute is, well, I mean, he didn't fulfill the what I thought anti-Semitism was. I just don't want people criticizing Israel is the real point. Two forces in this have joined forces in order to attack Corbyn because it looks like the Theresa May government is falling apart. They are howling to this degree, screaming, believing that if they scream fire loud enough, that the volume of their voice will somehow make people think that there's an actual fire. This is nonsense. And this woman is worse than a racist. She's willing to trespass and use the deaths and torture of millions in order for her own political expedience. Margaret Hodge and the hacks that work with her know exactly what is taking place. The idea that you would compare an investigation that should have kicked you out of labor, to the ghettoizing, the killing, and the burning and the gassing of Jews in the 30s. That should get across the unreality that's taking place. That statement right there should completely discredit Margaret Hodge for anything else Margaret Hodge has to say for the rest of her entire life. I'm going to end this here. I'm not going to keep this long, but this is fucking nonsense. Utter and complete nonsense. And by the way, one last point. I said this about Obama, but I'm going to re-emphasize this. Race, sex, gender, none of those things matter from the standpoint of a person who's doing politics. Those things are used. Those things are attributes that they're using for political ends. Those things are not attributes that they necessarily have. Now, understand what I mean by this. Obama is black, yes, but the issue is class. His African-Americanness, if you want to call it that, is used for political effect. It's not something that binds him to these other people. Class binds him, not race. Yes, he's black, but it's the class that he's associated with. I hope that makes sense. She's Jewish. Yes, she has an attachment to Israel. That is true, and she is going to focus on this idea of Israeli interests. And she is. This attack on Corbyn has a lot to do with him supporting Palestinian rights. It has nothing to do with him being anti-Semitic. There's a difference in those things. I support Palestinians. I don't want you killing Israelis. You can do both at the same time. They use these things for political effects. That's the point. Just because somebody is black, white, Jewish, whatever, what binds them is their class. Most of the time, anyway, what binds them is their class. You have a bunch of Blairites who've jumped on board to the Jewish lobby. The Jewish lobby doesn't like Corbyn because of his support for Palestinians. The Blairites don't like Corbyn because he's not Tony Blair. He has a new style. Well, at the very least, he has real labor politics. Both of them have joined forces to try to take down Corbyn because they're terrified that the Theresa May government is going to collapse at any moment. That's the reality of what's taking place in Britain. They're screaming at the top of their lungs because they are terrified that there is no way through Brexit. And the only way that they can deal with the Brexit thing is by another election. And they know that if there's an election today, Mr. Corbyn is coming home. So, I'm going to end this here because I don't want this one to be long. And I'll see you back in a few minutes. Thanks, guys. Oh, If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone.